Hey everybody, hope you're doing awesome. All right, so thanks so much for joining me and hope everything's going well in your life. Today is Tuesday, April the 23rd, and I thought I'd shoot this live right now while I'm between some meetings and some strategy sessions. And I have posted, hi Sanju, and I have posted just a little message that this live was coming on, and also that if you had any questions about scenario design, that you could post it in the comments of that message. But also, if you are here and you want to have some questions answered about scenarios and scenario design and how to create your own interactive learning episode, guess what? I am here, so you can post your questions, type them, and I should be able to see them, I hope, and then I will answer them as they come. Now, one of the things that came through actually is to work with me, you can't just go and like buy time with me, right? You can't just click a button. Well, you can, but it's not actually a direct, purchase button or anything. I actually have to talk to you, and we have a strategy session. Now, some people ask me, they're like, hey, how come, why do we have to do these strategy sessions? Can't we just go on Clarity FM and buy some time? And the reason is, my dear friends, the reason I do that is because when you join me on the strategy session, my major goal is to find out where you're at and to make sure that you and I are a good fit, and that you'll be a good fit for the rest of the people that I'm working with, because I'm trying to build a community of like-minded individuals, and it kind of makes sense if, there's a whole bunch of people who have the same vision and the same goal. So here's an example of why I actually need to talk to you. So this was, I think, was it last week? It's a blur. So one of the things that happened is I had a student who applied, right? And he had filled in the application, and he said, I'm really interested in scenario design. And also, one of the things that has happened is that what he was trying to do is he said that he was trying to design a scenario for school, right? And I said, okay, well, I don't know if I'll be able to help you with that, but let's talk, right? So he brought up the scenario during our call, and he was actually working on that for his actual, it was for a project. And what happened is he was being given these 4 slides, and the slides, what they were doing is they were slides from a real live interactive session, and the session was simulating a scenario. So one of the things that it was doing was, it was a bunch of people, and what happened is that they were all handed out in groups. They were handed out scenario questions, and then they were supposed to discuss how they were supposed to address those questions, and then at the end, maybe discuss it as a large group, right? So the goal of this particular project, this scenario project, what it really was the goal of it was to take these 4 slides and to turn them into an interactive project. So the challenge was that it wasn't that this was, and this person was working with us, a subject matter expert. So basically they were given 4 slides and they were told, hey, here you go, make this interactive. And so I think that very smartly, this person said, hey, we are actually trying to design something that's quality, and I can actually use it as a portfolio piece for myself. However, what this project is actually asking us to do is to take a bunch of slides and to turn them into clickable slides. So not necessarily anything to do with instruction or scenarios, but just interactivity basically in the software, which you can question whether that's actually a valuable exercise for somebody to do, or if it's just a way for somebody to test if you're creative, which really, as far as I'm concerned, in our business of being an instructional designer, our goal is not to be creative. Our goal is to help somebody achieve the outcome that we're trying to help them achieve. Creativity comes from looking at what's already working talking to a ton of people who are experts in that subject, and then putting together something compelling for that person to work through. You're not being Picasso, and even Picasso was building on his own work and others. You are being basically a curator of the best experiences out there, and you're reforming them to create something that's really meaningful and contextual for your audiences. And so when I see these creation projects, it really is, it's not about that. If anything, what should be being taught is the idea that iteration is what's most important, and being okay with letting go of your big darlings and actually getting feedback and iterating on quick prototypes so that you can design something that actually resonates and means something to your end user. So I am glad that there was no pay now button, and I wasn't able to simply just, this person would be able to join our sessions, because they would have no fit, and they would actually be like completely confused about the fact that we're actually going from start from ideating an actual project and designing this episode, and we're going from that all the way to finished scenario script. So if this person would have come in with 4 slides and said, hey, I'd like to make a scenario, we would have been like, okay, I think your project is not aligned with what we're trying to achieve here. Or they would have invested a whole bunch of their time trying to figure out, where do I fit in this actual workshop, which is not the goal, right? Basically the goal of working with me is so that I figure out exactly where you're at, so that you can say, okay, this is a fit for me, and I can actually accomplish something in this time frame, versus I have 4 slides and I need to make them interactive. Can we make this, somehow smush this into a workshop that you're doing, right? So that's why, thanks for that question. I really do appreciate it. So when you ask, why do I have to talk to you, Hannah, before I work with you? It is because I need to make sure that the things that I'm doing help you be successful, versus you having to basically try and fit what you're working on into my world, right? So it's got to be a win-win. So now the other, it was a fun conversation, and what's actually really awesome is that the person wrote me back a little while later and said, hey, this is actually really good. I'm glad we talked this through, because exactly what you suggested was the right idea. So sometimes it's good because I can actually just tell you if I'm not a good fit, and if designing an interactive learning episode is a big deal. Like, one of the things that you'll do is probably step a lot out of your comfort zone and do things that are not as that you usually wouldn't have done, because a lot of the people that I talk to, and a lot of the people that join the workshops and work with me one-on-one even, are people who have an academic background. And when I say academic background, I don't mean that they are from academia, although some of them are. What I say is that they are people who have been taught traditionally about how to think about learning. So a lot of people mention the ADDIE process. A lot of people mention things like, collectivism, and people will mention things like the learning theories and debunking learning styles. And that's a realm that I don't even think about or talk about, because when you get into interactive learning episodes, all you care about is, like, not all you care about, but the 90% of the things that you care about are crafting a super compelling story. And then within that story, which is a very profound experience for a lot of people, is now you're trying to now integrate into that this decision matrix, which is super cool and something that most people have never done before, right? And as far as I'm concerned, like, that's the next level, is you creating agency for somebody to direct a story without feeling like they're being pandered, like every decision is very challenging for them. But at the end, this is the best. They've learned something about themselves, or about this topic, or about their skill set, whatever it is. So that to me is like, wow, imagine if every month this year you were able to create a story that somebody was able to, at the end of that story, which, I mean, it could be like a 10-minute experience, right? 10-minute experience that shifts their perspective. Like, there's people who live their whole lives, right? And they have a philosophy or a mindset that doesn't even get changed or affected. Like, they live in their bubble, right? Nothing happens until like something tragic happens in their life, or they get into an accident, or somebody dies, and it takes that kind of moment for them to be like, I wonder if I should maybe live a little differently, or think a little differently, or whatever it is, right? Their paradigm gets challenged. Now imagine if you could capture those kinds of experiences that, you know, when you see people who are like living life in, let's say, the best way that somebody could live life, whether that is at your company, they're like the person with the most satisfying outset or outcome, or the person who's really enjoying coming to work because they figured something out. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go walk around, pick those people up, pick their stories up, pick up their aha moments and epiphanies, their story that convinced them that this is the way to be, this is the way to think. You're capturing that, and now all of a sudden you're launching that quickly, without pain, without overwhelm. Let's say every month you're launching one of those. Think about that. Now you got, instead of somebody going through life hoping that the epiphany is going to happen to them, hoping that they're going to have the right experience that will shift their perspective, that will do that, you're like, that's why I say you don't have to be creative in this business. You just have to be responsive and observant. Because when you do that, then you can recognize these opportunities, and you can even go to the business. I suggest this so much. Go to the business and say, hey, what are we struggling with? What are people like not, like what's that hump that people have a hard time getting over? Because a lot of times we have tons and tons of info. I don't know, whoever's watching right now, if you're in the, like, if you've ever come across a company or a workplace that hasn't had enough information. Like, usually there's some sort of a database full of stuff. And it's funny because we talk about like what's, you know, a lot of companies are like, yeah, we got to redo our database. Hello. We got to redo our database. We got to, you know, revamp our info. And I mean, I go to those places and I'll walk around and I'm like, well, look at all these competent human beings around here. They use this old school info. And thank you, Mohammed. and I'm thinking, this isn't about this info being like updated to look sexy, right? Because there's all these people around here that have, for some reason, they use the unsexy version of this information and all of these procedures, and somehow they're at the top of their game. So most times you realize that the reason why somebody is at a different level is not that they have access to better information, because there is very little now that's actually inaccessible to us. You want top of the line info, you go on YouTube, right? It's done. But what it is a perspective and a mind shift that somebody over here has, that maybe the top person has a different one. They think about things differently. They see things differently. They look at opportunities differently. It's like you have, you know, a lens that you're looking at the world through, and that person has just a different lens, and they have a different perspective. And so they can take the same information, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but you know, if you do, give me some action. But what happens is you can give two people the same book. You can give two people the same information. And one person can take that and turn it into a successful outcome. And the other person just, you know, stays the same, and they continue doing the same things over and over, right? So same book, but what's the difference between those two people? So the difference might be how they look at that information, how they perceive it. And I got to tell you the honest truth, a lot of times, thank you, a lot of times what it is what happens is it's not that the information is not good enough. Sometimes you do have to improve the information, but sometimes it's if that person perceives that there's a need for that info. So here's my example that I use all the time. And I love it because it's actually true. So let's say somebody tells you, oh, you know, our database is full of these outdated, gross videos, and we need to update them, make the people in them more current. Their haircuts need to be better. They need to be dressed in less old clothing. Like, we got to jazz it up. Also, you know, add animations, whatever, right? So I hear this from companies a lot. They're like, we got to dress up our content. We got to revolutionize it. And then this is what I bring up. I'm like let's say, and this might not happen to you, but it actually has happened to me. Let's say your toilet messes up and that mechanism where you flush gets all mangled and you don't know how to fix it, right? So what you do is, what do you do? I don't know. Do you guys know what you do? What do you do if something breaks in your house and you don't know how to fix it? What's the first thing you do? I'm gonna wait for you to type in your answer because I want to see what you guys do when something like breaks and you're like, what happened? I don't know how to fix it. I'm not a handy person. There's a bit of a delay on Facebook, so I will go on, but let's see if your answers come through as what I think, what I do, which is, I gotta tell you guys, I just go to YouTube and I'm like, has somebody else fixed this toilet mechanism? And then I go and look for it, right? I look at it. And I have to tell you, every single time I've done that, I don't actually look at HD quality. I look at how long it is. And also I look at how many views it has and how many likes it has as far as credibility. And I sometimes scan the comments, right? So what happens is, I don't care if the video is choppy. I don't care if the sound is off. I don't care if it's... All I care about at that very moment is that it helps me do what I need to do, right? Which is fix that mechanism. So what I want you to think about is that we're always thinking about pushing the info onto people, right? Pushing that info out and saying, hey, here's a bunch of good info. You're going to use it. You're going to need it one day. It's going to be so helpful. It's beautiful. But instead, think about why you access info. You access information because you find it relevant to your context and you find it kind of in the moment you need it. But you also know why you need it, because you need that info to fix something in the moment. And therefore, what I say is, with your interactive learning episode, you're not necessarily telling somebody how to fix something, how to address the problem. You're actually, one of your jobs is to help them understand that there is a problem that exists, because most of your learners, and I guarantee you this, don't think that the problem exists in the first place. What I mean by that is, they'll start your training and they'll be like, why am I doing this? I already know how to do this. Oh my gosh, again, another thing, I don't want to, I already know, I already got it, I got it. I don't know if that's ever come up for you, but trust me, it's there. So what you want to do is, through that story, through that episode, you want to have somebody recognize, they're like, hey, I have a gap. Oh my gosh, I thought I knew how to do this, but, and you asked me a bunch of really great situational type of questions, and I was like, well, that's awesome. I know how to solve this. I know how to deal with this. And maybe some of them will, which is wonderful, because then you're recognizing people for their knowledge, right? Which is awesome. Adults love that. Adults love it when you recognize that they come in with a full brain full of really good stuff. But then, all of a sudden, they're trying to solve the situation, and then they pick the choice because you've made some compelling questions, right? And one of the things that happens is they'll say, hey, I thought I knew how to solve that. I wonder if I do know how to solve these kinds of decisions. I thought I did. I really did. And then what happens is, you don't just give them one, give them 2, 3, 4. Have them really figure out that there's a gap. And guess what? That becomes like that YouTube situation where all of a sudden you got a problem and you're like, whoa, dude, I need to solve this problem because I thought I was pro. This situation comes up. I'm not going to know what to do. I got to brush up on my skills here. And guess what? Whatever you show me afterwards, however outdated it might be in the HTML world, if it's good info, and you do have to make sure it's good info, that's not to be ignored. But if that follow-up info is good info, I will devour it, because I hate not knowing things. I hate having a gap. I hate not being perfect. So, and also one of the things that now I know about this info is it's relevant to me, it's helpful. I know when I need to use it because now you've showed me the decisions and situations that I will actually find this info to be useful in. So those are the things you have to consider. So it's not necessarily, I'm not going to teach you how to fix something necessarily in a scenario, but if all I do is help you discover that you actually don't know how to do something and I can help you with following up with some great info, boom, win. All right. So, like I said at the very beginning of the session, because I was talking about strategy sessions and people are like, hey, Anna, how come I have to talk to you during the strategy session? And then I brought up my example about, they basically said, how come I just can't buy your time like on Clarity FM, right? And I was like, because some of the strategy sessions I've had, people were like, what I want to do is this. And I'm like, that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. And so one of the projects that I talked about is somebody who had 4 slides and they wanted to turn them into scenarios, right? And I was like, I don't think that's how it works. So I don't think we're gonna do good work here because I think your school project actually is asking for something else. So I always have to find out what you're actually working on, what your goal is. Because then I told this person, I'm like, dude, what you're doing, you're setting it up, that's great. When you're ready to craft your own experience and you want to own that thing, come talk to us and then we can work together. But right now, you go do that interactive project. So, yeah. So thank you so much for actually joining me. Now, if you guys have any questions and nobody answered my question about where they go for info, maybe you guys will be braver now. But one of the things that I was talking about is really just because we're always pushing info out, we have to think about what are some instances where what are some triggers for somebody to actually want to seek out that information, and that the pieces that we create don't necessarily need to be super pushy with instructional stuff. They actually can be something that draws somebody in. It's a pull instead of a push. Now, this other strategy that we were just actually talking about that I'll share with you because we just had our workshop session this morning. And this is so fun and genius. So as we're working through the models, and every week I work through a new framework so that people can see examples of the frameworks in practice and live examples, right? And we deconstruct them and talk about which ones they want to use for their projects and things like that. But one of the things that was really cool is one of our students has a course that's not necessarily compliance, but the course has a ton of stuff that the stakeholders are saying the person has to see it. I don't know if you guys ever have had any of those courses, but basically where they're like, by the end of this module, I need to make sure that they've seen these 5 PDFs, right? And you're like, okay, all right. So you do your analysis and you're like, well, why do they really need to see it? You're trying to like connect that info to something tangible, right? Like, what if they never see it? Will anything bad happen? Like, really, will it? And sometimes they can't justify it, but that's fine. This is one of those courses where you have to stick it in someplace, right? But this is a cool strategy. So let's say you have a bunch of content, and just make sure it's beautiful, and like one of the things that you do with any kind of PDF or any kind of resource that you attach, you write it in the person's voice. You don't write it in like some legal voice, like you if it's procedures or directions or something, you write it in friendly first person voice so that it's executable, right? So, but one of the things that's pretty awesome that you can do is, let's say somebody's working through a scenario and they get like 3 scenarios in, you can say, boom, you have unlocked a secret resource or a super resource. Good for you. And you basically, the information that you would have given to them regardless, and you would have been like, can you please read this before you leave this session? Basically what you're doing is you're saying, yeah, you unlocked this resource, good for you. And people actually now will open up your job aid thinking, this is something that I earned because of my awesome performance in this module. Go, right? So it's actually pretty cool because you can not only share these resources, and you don't share them up front. You give them as a reward. Let's say after they work through a couple of interactions. So you unlock this resource, and then also what happens is, because you can strategically place it at the right path, at the right moment in that learning path, then what you can do is you can say, okay, so now that they've gone through 3 of these, they're probably gonna find, let's say, more information about this pretty handy, because this is actually really contextual to what the decision they're making right now. So you can actually reveal those, like unlock these content areas for them so they can dig in more and kind of trick them into wanting to read them, because you've now created these juicy little pieces where they can actually unlock it because they've earned it. So I was like, yeah, that's genius, and I love it. And I didn't come up with that. It's something that I found in games. And this was, who was it using? Google actually used this pretty effectively for one of their training games. So I was like, this is awesome. We're going to use this because it works, because it worked on me. That's usually the best stuff. If you're like, this worked on me, why did it work? Let's deconstruct it. Oh, I'm going to use that in my next learning experience. So I hope you guys had a useful and helpful session with me. Super pumped that you joined me. Really appreciate that you took the time to listen. Now, next time, if you have any questions about what I talked about, like totally talk to me. Also, if you listen, this is what I do. And learning episodes is basically what I help other instructional designers and learning experience designers. That's basically what I work on, making sure that you produce. So if this is something you want to get good at, dig deeper into, or just figure out if what I do and what you do is a good match for you to produce a piece for yourself, for your product, then, hi Galina, then one of the things you need to do is actually have that strategy session with me. And the session is free. It's not like I charge you anything for it, but what it is it just helps me understand where you're at. Because like I said, sometimes what happens is, oh, thank you, Rosie. I'm glad you're going to find that that helpful. I know it's a really awesome hack. But like I said, I need to talk to you to actually figure out if this is something I can help you with, because I think that because this is a new medium for us. This is a new system and a framework that I've developed. And to be honest, I don't think everybody is ready and a good fit for it. So because a lot of us are, when I say e-learning, there's people who, my gosh, the things they come up with that are e-learning is kind of blows my mind, right? So that's why I need to make sure that during that session, we really figure out what your version of learning is, what my version of learning is, and where an e-learning then is another step, and where can we take that? Because otherwise confusion will ensue, and there will be crying, and we don't need that. So I'll put a link underneath so you can book a session. It's actually directly to my calendar. Fill out the form so I can learn more about your goals, and then we can talk. And also, if you have any questions about the content that I talked about today, post it underneath the video. I would love to answer your questions, and I do this quite a bit. There's my famous whiteboard. So tomorrow, I think tomorrow, I'll be doing another whiteboard video for y'all, and I hope you stick around for that. All right, so have a wonderful rest of the day and take care. And if you like this and you know somebody who would benefit from this, please share it. All right, take care. Hi, Camila. All right, talk to you soon. Bye, guys.